Hi everyone, Dave from Gemini Gamers here, and today's video is going to be about a topic that's really important to me, and that is Oblivion, and particularly whether Oblivion is still worth playing even 12 years after its release date in 2018. So I'm making this video really for fans of Skyrim and other Bethesda games who maybe haven't tried to play Oblivion because it's old, or because they are worried that they won't be able to get used to the older game mechanics or the older graphics. I actually came to Oblivion myself later than Skyrim, so I know how difficult it can be to get into an older game in a series that you love, and a game that you really want to get into, so this video is for people like that. I'm going to be trying my best not to compare the game too much to Morrowind and Skyrim. Obviously comparisons can be useful, but they do have their limits. It's difficult to describe something in a vacuum though, so I'll be doing my best. And as this video is intended for people who've never played the game before, I will be avoiding story spoilers and spoilers about any of the factions or anything like that. So don't worry about that if you've never played the game before. You're going to be safe in this video. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first topic we're going to be discussing is graphics. Now I wanted to get this out of the way as quickly as possible, as personally graphics aren't really a huge influence for me when I'm deciding whether or not I want to play a game. Obviously nice graphics helps, but I like to look more at the gameplay, the story, the world, and that's really what's important to me. But I do understand that graphics are important for some people. Now, Oblivion was actually released in 2006, which is 12 years ago, and so obviously, by modern standards, the graphics are a bit dated. The draw distances can be low at times, and without the 4GB patch, you might encounter areas loading in and there's some stuttering as well, particularly during combat. Now, however, the graphics can be hugely improved with mods, and that's what I've done. I've followed Bevelex's mod list to produce the footage in this video, so if you're interested in that, the link to that will be down in the description below. And I'll also be making a video in the future to talk about how to improve the visuals of Oblivion. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to make sure that you get our new content. Next up, we're going to be talking about the sound of the game. Now, in my opinion, this game has one of the most beautiful soundtracks in all of gaming. Really beautiful songs. Much more of a high fantasy tone than Skyrim's soundtrack, and I think it really suits the setting of the game well. In general, the sound design works to a high standard. Obviously there are mods that you can get, like Sounds of Cyrodiil, to improve various sounds if you want to do that, but I think that the vanilla sound design really does a bang-up job of making you feel like you're immersed in that high fantasy setting. Now, there are some issues with the voice acting. At the time, they had a limited pool of voice actors, and so it does feel like a lot of the characters, particularly just the unnamed NPCs, are voiced by the same people. You can really tell after a while of playing the game. And in a Bethesda game where you're playing so many hours, that's gonna grate on you sometimes. So it did on me at least. Also, there is some inconsistencies with certain unnamed characters, like beggars have some voice issues, like they'll have multiple different voices depending on the line of dialogue they're saying. This can be fixed with mods, but I just thought I'd mention that here. That overall, the voice acting is a massive improvement, in my opinion, over Morrowind's text-based dialogue system, where every character knew something about every topic that you would ask about, and it would be the same thing, very repetitive. The dialogue here feels much more like living and breathing, but it was expanded on a lot further in Skyrim, so if you've just played Skyrim, you're going to feel like you're taking a step back here with the dialogue, and particularly with the pool of voice talent. But what's interesting about this is that although they have limited number of voice actors, they actually had some top-class Hollywood talent come in to do several important characters for the main quest. So Patrick Stewart and Sean Bean are both in this game, and Sean Bean actually plays a pivotal role as sort of the main protagonist of the story, really, and you're more his assistant in a way. So that was really interesting. I love Sean Bean, I love Patrick Stewart, and I'm glad that they're in this game. But and it really shows the ambition of Bethesda as well to get these high talented voice actors in, these most expensive Hollywood names. But I feel like the money probably could have been better spent hiring professional voice actors that would have been a lot cheaper. Could have had a lot more of them to diversify the voice cast. So that would be my personal feeling on the matter. But, you know, Bethesda, they do what they do, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work so well, but every time the game is fantastic. So really, I can't criticize too highly, and, you know, they really improved this going forward. And obviously you can improve the sound design with mods, as I've already said. You can change the soundtrack, but I really don't see why you'd want to do that. Absolutely fantastic. So top marks for me on the sound design, really. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is gameplay, and really this is one reason, in my opinion, why this game is worth giving a try to, because it is so different from Skyrim in so many fundamental ways. And the first of these is that there's actually a class system in this game, more like a traditional RPG and much less like Skyrim's more open approach. And I think that this class system really adds a lot of meaning to the choices that you make about your character, because your character can't be an all-round, you know, sneaking mage who's also an awesome melee warrior. You have to specialize, you have to think about the decisions that you make, or it could cost you. And really, this helps increase replayability of the game immensely, and also role-playing in the game. You know, it feels just more like you're a real person in a real world. The leveling system in the game is also different, and this means that you can only level up if your character levels up in skills that he is spec'd to. So if those are his major and minor skills, part of his class, then you'll be able to level up from leveling those skills up. But if it's just another skill, you can level the skill up all you want. You can level it to the maximum level, but it won't help your character gain experience. So this is a really interesting mechanic, and, you know, later in the game it does cause a few problems, but I think in general it's pretty good. You know, it's a pretty good concept. So I think it's interesting. I think it's a good reason to give this game a try. There are also other mechanics in the game, like acrobatics, that got taken out, and these allow for really interesting character builds. For example, you can be a cat burglar, jumping around rooftops and, you know, generally causing mayhem, so that's really interesting. And there's also a spellcrafting system in the game, which, although it has to be unlocked, and it can make the game a little bit unbalanced when you've unlocked it and its power is unfolded before you. But it's really interesting. It makes you feel like a real mage, like a real wizard. Just a fantastic idea that I really wish that they'd refined further rather than just scrapping completely. Now, the combat, the melee combat and the range combat is worse than Skyrim's. There's no doubt about that. It doesn't feel as intuitive, you know, it doesn't feel as weighty when you hit someone, but they did still do a good job, and it's still very playable, particularly with mods. So I think the combat, although it is worse than Skyrim, in general it does hold up. Now, the dungeons were actually all designed by one person for this game, and that does really show. So if you play the vanilla game, eventually you'll get used to the dungeon layouts. They won't seem as interesting and creative to you as maybe Skyrim's dungeons were. And so there is actually a mod called Better Dungeons, which goes a long way to fixing this problem by basically redesigning all the dungeons from scratch. And I think that mod is fantastic, definitely worth a pick up, and that's going to be one of the mods I talk about when I do my modding video later on. And additionally, one other change is that your character can have magic and weaponry equipped simultaneously, and there's actually a separate spellcasting button, and this really improves the viability of spell sword and battle mage builds that use both magic and melee. So overall, the gameplay is really interesting, really different, and one of the best reasons to play this game so far. So next we're going to be chatting about the setting of the game. I think this is one of the standout features of the game. I love the setting of Oblivion. It's this sort of charming, high fantasy setting, a massive, massive change from the bleak landscapes of Skyrim and Morrowind, really. The world is at once vibrant and familiar, and there's bright colours, beautiful scenery. It's wonderful to walk around in, really reminiscent of Middle-earth from Lord of the Rings, and you know, it couldn't be better for me personally, because I love that high fantasy setting. It's kind of an oddity. It stands out a bit compared to Morrowind and Skyrim, which are generally alien worlds with fantasy tropes mixed into them, whereas this game is full-on fantasy trope for the most part. And this classical setting, maybe it won't be for you, you know. It could be that you prefer Skyrim and its bleak landscapes, the cold, harsh environments. Some people describe it as boring or predictable, but for me personally, I think this is exactly what the series needed, returning to its Daggerfall and arena roots, going back to that vanilla high fantasy setting. Really enjoyable to play through. If you like that setting, you'll really like this game probably. And also, another nice thing about it is that the world is so beautiful to look at that when the Oblivion gates pop up, which are a major part of the main quest, they really feel like a scar on the landscape, and it makes you feel like you have a duty to go and close them. It's just a wonderful integration of the story, the gameplay systems, and the world that I think just comes off perfectly. So, again, fantastic setting, top marks here. Maybe it won't be for you, but just I can only speak for myself, and I absolutely love the setting. Next up for analysis is the story, and I don't want to spoil anything here, so I'm just going to be giving a brief overview and giving you my opinion on the story. I think the story is really interesting in that you don't play from the perspective of the Chosen One, like you do in Morrowind with the Neverine and in Skyrim with the Dragonborn, and in so many other fantasy role-playing games, but instead you take on the role of the Chosen One's sort of assistant or his companion, as you go together to try and stop the evil plot of the Daedric Lord Maroon's Dagon, who's trying to drag the normal world of Tamriel into the Daedric realm of Oblivion. So this works with Oblivion gates popping up all over the world during the progression of the main story, and this is a really great, as I've said already, is a great integration of the gameplay systems with the world, and it really feels like there is a crisis happening. And it's kind of like the dragon encounters in Skyrim in a way, but I think it's executed even better here, with more integration into the systems of the game. Sometimes the Oblivion gates can be a little bit boring, but overall, I think they're a really nice change of pace. Really makes you feel like you've got to go and close them because they're just so ugly. And the theme of light against darkness, that classic high fantasy theme, is just explored really well here. So overall, I think that the story stands up to the main story in Skyrim and Morrowind, and in some places it maybe exceeds that story, although maybe I'm just biased because I love Sean Bean and I love Patrick Stewart, so maybe I'm biased in that respect. But I don't think it's the most engaging content in the game. In fact, I think that's the faction content. I'll be talking about that next. There are 4 main factions in the game, and these are the Dark Brotherhood, the Thieves Guild, the Mages Guild, and the Fighters Guild. And in my opinion, these are far more interesting than their equivalents in Skyrim. Now, progression in the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild involves travelling around the various towns and cities in Cyrodiil, completing tasks for the guild leaders in order to gain their recommendations, and I think this is considerably more immersive than the entry requirements to, for example, the College of Winterhold and the Companions in Skyrim, and allows for greater role-playing opportunities. Feels like you're really moving forward with the guild, you're completing tasks for the leaders, you're getting recommendations, it just feels very organic, very real, which helps add to that immersion factor. And also, progression in the Mages Guild allows you to access the Arcane University, which is tantalizingly locked right in front of you in the center of the Imperial City, on full display, but you can't access it. So that gives you that incentive to progress in the story, and gives you more than just loot or a title. It really makes you feel like you want something in the game. And also this will give you access to spellcrafting, which it gives you a gameplay reward as well, and this befits a true mage really. So I really like the Mages Guild. Fighters Guild as well. I've not played it as much because I don't normally play fighters. Normally I'm playing a mage, or a thief or an assassin. But I do really like both of these quests, and I think they're handled really well. And then there's also the Dark Brotherhood, which is a lot of people's favourite questline in the entire game. It's fantastic. It's wonderfully macabre. It has some of the best voice acting in the series, including Lucien Lachance, a standout character from the entirety of all of Bethesda's games. Progression's handled in an interesting way based on, the amount of contracts you can complete, and there are various special contracts which are interesting and unique, and also have bonus objectives which give you a reward for completing the quest in a certain way. So overall, highly engaging, really worth playing. The Dark Brotherhood, if you're going to play this game and you're only going to play one storyline, I would recommend to play the Dark Brotherhood. There's also the Thieves Guild. They're really interesting too. They feel integrated into the world and very immersive as well. in that the beggars in the Imperial City that help you find the Thieves Guild, but you need to be quite persuasive in order for this to happen. I think this is a lot more immersive than being approached in the middle of town in broad daylight by a man who is openly advertising that he's a member of a criminal syndicate like Brynjolf in Skyrim. There's also a full gladiator questline, which allows you to join a team of gladiators and fight to the death in the arena in front of a crowd of spectators, which is really interesting. Obviously, that they were actually planning to expand upon this a lot more in development, but they ran out of time. But, you know, top marks for effort. Glad they still included it. I love, you know, Spartacus and other gladiator things, so really like this inclusion, really enjoyed playing this questline. So overall, the factions are immersive, they provide numerous role-playing opportunities. It can be difficult to rank up in the factions, but you know, the sense of achievement and accomplishment when you do manage to do that and the rewards that that gives you really makes it worthwhile. So I think overall fantastic work on the factions here. The final topic we're going to be talking about today is the DLC for Oblivion, because this is really important. Obviously, if you're playing the game today, you will be playing probably the Game of the Year edition, which will contain all the DLC, so it's important to look at this. I consider it important with previous games to consider their DLC as well. Now, Oblivion took some criticism at the time of its release for the now infamous Horse Armor DLC, which was in effect an early form of microtransactions where you paid, I think it was something like £3.99, $3.99, and you got some horse armor, so people weren't really happy about that. But despite this, the majority of the DLC released was high quality. There was lots of dungeons, player homes, and some quest lines as well. And one of these quest lines was what may be perhaps the best Bethesda DLC of all time, the Shivering Isles. This DLC allows you to enter the world of the mad god Sheogorath, which is made up of two realms, madness and dementia, which both have vastly different aesthetics and feeling. And really, this DLC has a fascinating story, really interesting world, great ending, and it's just great to play through it. It's so different in tone from the rest of the game. So yeah, really worth checking out. Great DLC, couldn't recommend it enough. So, as you can all probably tell by now, I am a massive fan of this game, and I really have a soft spot for this game. So, if you haven't played this game yet, and you're a fan of Bethesda's games, or open world RPGs in general, you should definitely give this game a try. Once you get used to the older systems and the older graphics, and particularly with mods, this game is just a wonderful experience, really great to go in blind. I really envy anyone that still has this game on their horizon, rather than in their rearview mirror. Now, I think really that this game, the only way to describe it is a masterpiece, and although there are some flaws, really I prefer this game to Skyrim in a lot of ways, and I played Skyrim first, so, you know, just overall fantastic game. One of the best experiences I've ever had playing a game, and with mods, it really is a top-class modern experience. Now, I'm going to be working on a new video to show everyone how to remaster Oblivion for 2018. So if you guys are interested in watching that and in seeing how to do it, pretty simple. I'm going to be laying out in the simplest possible terms, really to try and make it as easy as possible for you guys to get Oblivion installed and you know, working well on your computers. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching this video. Really appreciate it. And yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. See you later.